Welcome back, budgeteers. Coach Nino Villa here, disciple of Christ, husband, father, and financial coach. And today on the New Money Habits podcast, I'm sitting down with our friend Karen Hackman to talk about money and marriage.
Hey there, budgeteers. The new year is here, and you know what that means. It's time for fresh starts and new habits. If one of your goals is to get better with your money, New Money Habits has exactly what you need to kick things off right: the Payday Power Planner. This isn't just any budget tool. The Payday Power Planner is designed to work with your pay periods, not just the calendar month. Why does that matter? Because it helps you to see exactly when your money is coming in and going out. No surprises, no guesswork. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll know if you're working with a surplus or facing a deficit, so you can make informed decisions about your money. It's not just a plan, it's the clarity and control you've been looking for to start the new year strong. Make this the year you finally build new habits for financial freedom. Grab your free Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits today and take the first step toward a better financial future. Visit newmoneyhabits.com now, because this year it's time for a better plan for your money.
Well, welcome back, Karen. So happy to have you with us again. I know it's been a while.
It has. I can't remember. I can't remember how long it's been, Nino. But it's been great to we've kept up that communication, and it's great to be on your podcast again. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. I can tell you, just because I go back to these things sometimes, it was September of last year, so September of 2024. It's been nearly 6 months already.
Wow, where does the
I
time
can't
go?
believe it. Yeah. But as you said, we've kept up that communication. We've kept in contact. We have some really exciting things going on. And I know that one of the reasons we had you on before is because of your expertise in and your passion for money and marriage. I know that you love working with married couples, and sometimes you lean towards those newlyweds just to help people get on the right page early, but it doesn't stop you from working with other married couples. And so, again, I'm just happy to have you back on to talk a little bit about what has happened over the 6 months, but also where things are headed in the near future.
Okay, well, as you know, New Money Habits have created a Patreon page, and I'm so excited that you guys have invited me just to collaborate with you. And I am working on a collection in that Patreon membership called Money and Marriage, and where I just can share my expertise, my knowledge, my top tips on how to get couples talking about money and working together, and just getting on the same financial page, creating and conquering their money goals together as a team. And I am super excited. I know that you've been working really hard, and what an awesome opportunity for us to work together and also just to share the love. I love working with the coaches. We are so supportive of each other, but also just to help couples, just to get a handle on their finances. And I know that God is doing a great thing, and I'm just super excited for what he's got in store.
Yeah, as am I. There's no other way to explain what is transpired and how it's all unfolded. As you said, New Money Habits has launched a Patreon page. We kind of did a soft launch in February. It's been more of a hard go here in March. And you were so gracious to agree to collaborate with us there, you and a handful of other coaches. And I'm just so excited about the diversity of expertise that we are bringing to our Patreon members, where we have somebody like yourself who focuses on money and marriage, but then we have somebody who focuses on student loans, and somebody who is an enrolled agent at the IRS and can help people with their tax issues. And so it's just incredible, the collaboration that's happening over there, so that we can bring our members just an incredible value and an incredible diversity of how to think about their finances, and from all these different perspectives and from all of these specialties. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I love looking at the collections and seeing what other coaches are jumping on board. And as you said, there's just a great variety. There's something for everybody, no matter where you are, no matter how old you are. It's great. And I am just so excited.
Yeah. Yeah. The even the age diversity, I'm loving it, because I think a lot of us financial coaches are a little bit more established, or just can kind of have been around, but we have a couple of young
Mhm.
Gen Z
Yeah,
coaches who get it.
they
They really
do.
get it.
And they're so
And
young. And I'm like, oh, I feel so old. But, and I'm like, oh, if I wish I'd known what they know now in their 20s, and I'm so excited to have them on board on the team. And yeah, and what a great, diverse collection of fantastic coaches.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, I know that we have a series over there called Golden Nuggets, and you've contributed a couple of those already. Why don't you just talk a little bit about, you know, what what people can kind of expect if they come and join us over on Patreon? What kind of golden nuggets are you laying down over there?
Yeah, well, it's all things that I wish I'd known 20 years ago. So, just if your listeners don't know, my husband and I were married for 18 years before we got on the same financial page. And if you don't know, you don't know. And it's just because we didn't know. We didn't know how to get talking about money. We didn't know how to budget, all of these things. And that's why I'm passionate about sharing with other couples the things that it took me nearly 2 decades to know. And so for my story is that my husband was quite reluctant and overwhelmed when it came to talking about money. So when I realized that our finances were a mess, we need to do something about it. So I jumped into all the personal finance podcasts, books, and it took me a few years just to take snippets of information. Every now and again, someone would give me a really top tip, and it's all of my top tips that it took me ages, years to learn, and I'm sharing them with our people in the collection. It's things like um, keep your budget meeting short, like 15 minutes. You don't need to drag it out and make it longer, because if you've got an overwhelmed and a reluctant spouse, that's really not going to help. So it's things like that. It's definitely things I wish I'd
Yeah.
known 20 years ago. And I am just so excited that I'm helping couples not to take nearly 2 decades to get on the same financial page.
I think it it's an important testimony to how it's never too late, right? So it took you 18 years, but you got there, and it's never
Mm-hmm.
too late. And I love the
Yeah.
flavor of your advice, because it's never just the, hey, make your budget meeting shorter. There's always a flavor of something like, hey, grab your favorite beverage, grab a tea, grab a coffee, grab a glass of wine, uh, make it kind of like a date, that those sorts of things. You flavor
Yeah.
your advice with real relational um, components to them. So I love that about your content, and it's not just video content and your top tips that you're sharing. You're sharing some other tools and resources with the audience and with members that I think are incredibly valuable and just will help
Mm-hmm.
married couples get on the same page a lot quicker. So happy to have you over there. Incredibly grateful that you are collaborating with us and that you were so gracious to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we've shared with you, and it's just because we keep this thing conversational. I mean, at New Money Habits, the three founding members love to collaborate. We love collaboration. We think collaborating is so much better than competition. And
Yeah.
to have a dozen coaches say, yeah, you know what, collaboration's important, and let's bring all of this extra value. Uh, can't thank you guys enough.
Hey there, budgeteers. You know, good news can only be good news if there's bad news. So, what's the bad news? The bad news is you and I have a deadly disease called sin, and this disease causes us to rebel and disobey God. See, God is holy, righteous, and just, and He cannot be in the presence of sin. So, this horrible disease of ours separates us from the God who created us. And the bad news gets worse. There isn't anything you or I can do to make ourselves right with God. We are dead in our sins and on our way to an eternity separated from God. But that's not God's will for us. See, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. God did what only God could do. He made a way for us to be reconciled to Him through Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners like you and me. While we were still sinners, storing up God's anger against us for our rebellion and disobedience, Christ died for us. Jesus took the punishment that you and I deserve and have earned. Jesus is the substitute for your punishment and mine. Now, isn't that some good news? The word gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you and I broke God's law and Jesus paid the fine. When we place our faith and trust in Jesus, we get to experience God's grace and mercy. Our gratitude should turn us from our rebellious and disobedient sin toward God, seeking after Him and His righteousness. When we do, God gives us a new heart and a new mind. Praise God for His goodness, and remember, God loves, humans sin, Jesus saves.
Your expertise is getting couples on the same page. But a lot of times couples aren't starting there, and sometimes it's even worse than that. Money fights and money problems are the leading cause of divorce. And God's word tells us that the two have now become one, and don't allow anybody to separate what God has brought together. And so I like to combat anything that's going to get in the way of that, like money fights and money problems. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Like, talk about where those fights and problems stem from, but maybe some of your top tips for resolving those.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when I speak to my newlywed clients, I always start with, look, you've come from two different families, yeah, and your families may have talked about money, not talked about money. They may have been open and honest with you as you grew up, and neither situation is right or wrong, you know. So as you said, two now become one. So you've left your families behind now, and you are now creating a new family, and so you have to have a new plan. And so for myself included, it was I can be quite stubborn, and so I just had to realize that my husband was just coming from a different family, and they did different things differently there. So one of my top tips for newlyweds is to remember that neither one is right or wrong. You have to show each other love and grace, understand where where your spouse is coming from, and then you can create a new plan. And I just find that with my newlyweds, or even my older married couples, they sometimes they have never even talked about their money story and their money background before. So it's a really good open conversation where we show peace and love and lots of grace, and we just set a very calm, non-judgmental atmosphere where it's okay. There's no shame here. So we just try and get on that same financial page, remembering that no one is right and no one is wrong.
Yeah, the way I'm thinking of it right now, as you're sharing, the way I'm processing that and thinking about again your approach to helping married couples is, think about it like the courtship again, dating, right? You're getting to know. If you don't know these things about your spouse, you're getting to know. And when you're first getting to know someone, when you're dating, you're on your best behavior, right? You got your listening ears on. You're not being judgmental because you're just so overly infatuated with the person that, again, you're on your best behavior.
Yeah.
So I encourage our listeners, if you're going to sit down with your spouse and you're going to start to uncover, what is their story? How do they relate with money? What are some of the things that they learned at an early age that are driving their behaviors today? That you do so with your listening ears on, that you do it with a sense of intrigue and excitement that you would when you're first dating, where it's all like, hey, I just want to get to know, like, what do you think about this and that sort of thing.
And
So as you were sharing,
have that curiosity. Have the curiosity. What makes you think that? How did you get to that point? Tell me more. And just really be curious and just dive in and just ask questions.
yeah, absolutely. communication is obviously key, right? And being able
Absolutely.
to communicate well means
Mm,
a whole host of things. It means being able to listen, and listening to understand rather than listening to respond. It means um, understanding the other person's intent, right? This is your spouse, and whether you're newly married or been married 30 years, you I would imagine you'd give your spouse the benefit of the doubt that their intent is always good. I actually just had this conversation with my wife this morning. We were talking about some family dynamics that are taking place. There was the loss of her father recently, and it's
so,
just caused a lot of turmoil, and
yeah.
it's actually um, revealed a lot of darkness in the family. But we were talking about how when we're communicating, we've learned a lot. We've been married 17 years. We've we've learned a lot in those 17 years. And one of the things that I have to always remind myself is, even if my wife is struggling to communicate clearly, or if she is being critical, that her intent has never
Mm,
been to hurt or demean or in any way damage me. That is, she's not a malicious person like that. She is not sarcastic or rude, or she's not somebody who cuts down. So when she's being critical, because she can be critical, it's it's never to harm me. It is that she's trying to communicate something that she is feeling, and she just might be struggling on how to communicate that in a way that doesn't come with the criticism. But I
yeah.
know my wife, and I know her intent, and I know her intent is good. Just like scripture says that God's intent for us is not to harm us, but to prosper us. Her
Mhm.
intent is not to harm me. She's just trying to communicate. And I think, as the receiving spouse, if we can kind of remember, like, this is my loved one, this is my spouse, I know the intent is good. And I also understand, I want to clarify that I know that not every spouse always has good intentions. But if
Yeah.
yours does, give them the space to communicate in a way that you're not just going to, react or respond harshly because you
Yeah.
feel like you're being criticized.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, with such busy lives, sometimes it's very easy just to go a week or two without sitting down with your spouse and sharing a cup of tea or your favorite beverage, and just having those important like catch up moments, maybe a date night, just where you can just be together on your own with no interruptions. No, maybe no, in the nicest possible way, no children, because we know that young children can take a lot of your attention, but just having time just to sit down and just communicate with each other. And as you say, give them that space to talk so you're not rushing around to the next job on your list.
Yeah. We have made ourselves quite busy, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
We,
Unfortunately, yes, we have lots of things to
yeah,
do, always trying to get to the next job to tick it off your list. Yeah. So we have to pause and just remember to breathe and just to, I guess, stop and smell the roses. Do you have that saying in America where you just have to just
yes,
breathe and just smell the roses, be thankful what you have for what you have? Yeah, absolutely. It's important.
yeah.
It's important.
And I think it's important to uncover the priorities. Um,
Yeah.
I think about how, I know this is true for me. I can exhaust a lot of patience and a lot of kindness on people who might not even deserve it, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But my point being, like, I can be at work at the office,
Mhm.
and I'm just incredibly patient. I'm incredibly kind to those around me. And then I get home, and all of a sudden, the wife and the children don't receive the same level of patience and kindness. And so when I say there's an order to things, like, in a priority here, the priority should be that my wife gets the best of
Yeah.
my patience and my kindness. My children should get the best of my patience and kindness. Now, that doesn't mean that gives me license to be unkind and impatient with others, but for crying out loud, to exhaust all of my patience and kindness on perfect strangers and then not
Mm.
exercise that on my wife and children, something is amiss.
Yeah. Do you find you need to maybe just take 10 minutes, half an hour by yourself just to like switch into your family mode, and then you will be more patient and kind, maybe. I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud because sometimes I know that I need some time out. Sometimes I say I'm all peopled out. If there's I'm just all peopled out. I need just half an hour on my own before I can be the best version of myself again. Does that
Yeah,
make
I
sense?
think there's a part of that for me. What I find is I'm wildly preoccupied. I am I'm just so consumed with thought sometimes that
Mhm.
that's where my lack of patience and kindness stems from is like because I'm so preoccupied. So what I need to do and what I've found, I'm in a season of like I need to be renewed by the spirit and I just need to like confess like Lord, I am so preoccupied right now. And I feel like I'm
Mhm.
preoccupied with things that don't really matter, or I mean they matter but maybe not in this moment. So can you help me to like put that at rest so that when I engage with the family, I'm present. And
Mhm.
when I'm present, the patience and the kindness, they're
They're a
in
good
large
supply.
supply,
Yeah, I think so. And you have to
readily
remember,
available and in large supply.
yes, and you have to remember that Jesus even took time out to pray, didn't he? Away from the
That's right.
crowds, you know?
That is right.
Hey there, budgeteers. It's a brand new year, and that means it's time for new habits, starting with your money. Take charge of your finances in 2025 with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is all about giving you the knowledge, tools, and support to make confident money moves and build a rock solid financial foundation. Here's the deal, we're offering a free discovery session to kick off your journey to financial freedom. That's right, no strings attached. In this session, one of our expert coaches will help you to identify your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We'll help you master your money mindset, sharpen your money management skills, and keep you accountable every step of the way. Make 2025 the year you say goodbye to financial stress and hello to the freedom you've been dreaming about. Schedule your free discovery session today and start creating the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom.
You have a pretty unique way of getting people on the same page. And I know you have a course that
Mhm.
would help people get on the same page. So when we're talking about money fights and money problems, not being on the same page can lead to strenuous relationships. And we're talking about how to get somebody on the same page. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your course and how they can get on the same page with their spouse?
Yeah, thank you for letting me share. Yeah, it's a 5-week coaching program called Discover Financial Success as a Married Couple, and it's very simple but very effective. And the couples that I've worked with have been from newly engaged couples to couples that have been married for over 10, 13 years, and all of them have found such value in it. And it's basically a very informal way to talk about your money stories, where you've come from, where you are now currently with your finances, where you would like to be, and we together we make a plan on how you can get there. And we lots of things come up in the conversation, like what were your money stories? How do you know how to budget? Do we talk about joint bank accounts? Do we have separate bank accounts? All of these things come up, and we talk about where the couples want to be, and we talk about their families, especially for the couples that have been married for over 10, 15 years. We talk about their children going to universities, and it's just a great, open, honest conversation where we're just talking about, do you want to help your children at university? How do you feel about that? Let's make a plan. And just lots and lots of things over the 5 weeks come up. And it's just a great way for couples to get on the same financial page, where couples that I've worked with have had separate bank accounts, or they've had joint bank accounts, and the husband has had the access to the banking app. The wife has no clue about what's in their bank account, but has the card, goes shopping, and then the husband gets really cross because she spent so much money. But how can you be cross with her when you haven't communicated that to her? So it's all about the communication and keeping those lines of communication open, being open and honest with one another. And I love it when couples create those money goals and we start seeing those, they're conquering those money goals together as a team. And I know that being on the same financial page is not only a great blessing for your finances, but also for your marriage as well. It just opens up the doors, and it's just a kind of a holistic way of just really improving your relationship with your spouse as well. So I'm just passionate about it. I do love working with newlyweds, as I said earlier, because it prevents them from going for 2 decades without talking about money, but also for couples that have never talked about money before. And they're like, oh, this is so eye-opening. Things like your peace of mind fund that I know you guys talk about, and the things that as financial coaches we know that couples need, but we know because we know, but other couples have never thought of that before. And I know with some of my clients, we talk about a peace of mind fund and they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. Why haven't I thought of that before? But
Yes.
it's just fantastic for me having those conversations. And the other night I came back home and my daughter said, how was your meeting? And I said, oh, it was so fun. Obviously, I don't go into the details, but I obviously get so excited and so passionate. My daughter was like, how could talking about money be fun? So we're gradually getting with my daughter that talking about money is fun, and it just excites her mum. So yeah, it's great. I love it, and I just love and even the other day. So I sent out a client survey, as you probably do, Nino. And one of the questions is, did you get the results that you expected? And one client said no, and I was like, oh. And then he went on to say went beyond my expectations. He felt overwhelmed, stressed, but now he's got a plan, and they're putting it into action. And that's just like a complete game changer for them. So that makes me very happy.
Yeah. For better or for worse, our money touches every aspect of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to have an effect on our relationships. And so talking about money becomes fun because you see the byproduct, which is an improved relationship. I work with a younger couple. I'll say younger because I think they're in their early 30s. But when I first started working with them, while their relationship was a very good relationship and it was very strong, there was, I think, a sense of uncertainty. How do we move forward? How do we move forward confidently? We're constantly questioning every decision we're about to make. Well, in the time that we've been working together, which is about 18 months, they have bought a home. They have decided to, the one already had a chiropractic practice. He decided he's just going to go out on his own. So he started a business. She was already an entrepreneur, and she decided instead of renting a chair, she's now going to, she now has her own salon where she's renting chairs out to other people.
Oh,
And
great.
so not only have they had success with their money, but then they even talk about in their relationship, their communication has flourished. They can make all these decisions confidently because they know how to talk about these things and how to communicate with one another in a way that it's like we don't have to continue guessing and be worried, and it's just awesome to
Yeah.
watch. I wanted to ask you a question about the course real quick, because we're talking about married couples, and you said you like working with the newlyweds, you'll work with olders. But is it exclusively for those who are already married, or would this benefit a couple who is maybe engaged and on the verge of being married?
Yeah, so I worked last summer. I worked with a lovely young couple from England, and they have just recently been engaged, and they are getting married. What are we now? March. They're getting married in a few months' time, and I did the coaching program with them, and it was great because I know now they've started. They're going to start their married life on the same page with their joint money goals together, and And they always said, "Oh, we've never thought of that." There's things that they haven't even thought of before. And I know that from our experience, we had marriage prep classes at our church. We had marriage mentors for the first 3 years of our married life, and we had a financial advisor. And none of them had said to us, you need to start talking about money and have a budget. And so, that's why I'm just so passionate about helping couples, because if they don't have that information, how are they going to really progress and really live their life to the full?
Yeah. Because as you were sharing kind of the elements of the course, I thought to myself, I have a loved one who's about to get married. I'm like, man, he and his future bride really should sit down and do these things now.
Yes.
Don't wait until you're married. How about you talk about them now? Because you may find that, these things are really important, and they kind of change
Especially,
the way that you even enter into the marriage.
yeah, and especially with the cost of weddings. I mean, I don't know about in the US, but in the UK, you can spend thousands of pounds and it can get completely out of control. So if you're already talking about money and you are monitoring and tracking how much money you're spending on your wedding, and hopefully not getting into debt for your wedding day, that's a great start to your wedding, because I know that many married couples are starting their married life in 30, 40, maybe even £60,000 worth of debt, over one day and a honeymoon. And I'm not saying that's not worth it. If you've got the money, fantastic. But if you haven't, then maybe there are some choices that you could make. So you don't start your married life so stressed and overwhelmed about your credit card bills or your loan that you took out, or things like that. So super exciting.
The average wedding in the
Mm-hmm.
United States is $33,000.
That's amazing. And then how does that compare with your average wage, like annual wage? Is that more than people earn?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Average annual, I'll do household income, which would
Yeah.
be usually two incomes, or no, let's do average salary. The average salary it's twice that. It's
Okay.
$66,000. But
That's
think
still a
about that.
big
You are
chunk.
spending half of your yearly wages on a big party.
Yeah, on a huge party. And
Yeah.
I did say to my husband the other day, maybe we should have to start saving for my daughter's wedding. But I think she's quite frugal enough to know that she's not going to need all these extras that you seem to see on Instagram or Facebook, or on all these glossy wedding magazines, that you don't really need all the extras. If
Yeah.
you can afford it, fantastic. Have an amazing day. Go for it. But if you can't, let's
Absolutely.
just take a bit of a breather. Do you need it? Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
And I want to clarify for our listeners, because it probably sounded like I just delivered that with a whole lot of judgment. You're spending half of your annual salary on a party. But um I think part of the reason it came out that way is because the divorce rate in the United States is also ridiculously high. So for people to spend that kind of money to get married, but then for it not to be a lifelong commitment is like again, I go back to like priorities and kind of putting things in order. I It makes perfect sense to spend that kind of money to bring two families together, to celebrate the joining of two families, to have all the generations there
Yeah.
celebrating it from grandma and grandpa, or great grandma and great grandpa,
Mm.
so that they can um, share wisdom
Yeah.
with the next generation, and for the future generations to see like what that is when it's done in a way that truly brings honor to the marriage
Mm.
and honor to God. But when it brings honor to the marriage,
Yeah.
like, hey, spend that kind of
Yeah.
money. But here in the United States, it feels like marriage has become an extension of dating.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah, let's get married. Let's see how that's gonna work out. Like, what do you mean, let's see how that's gonna work out? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I read a statistic the other day that, let me just find it here so I don't. It says 54% of people cited debt as a major reason to consider divorce. to consider it.
Yeah, no.
It's scary, isn't it?
It really is. And it's interesting you bring up that statistic today, because just yesterday in our larger Facebook group, I was noticing conversations about similar things where there was like a hidden debt, and some of the comments were like, "Oh, well, that's grounds for divorce," and blah blah. And I'm like, "Whoa, we went from 0 to 60 really quick.
Yeah.
Like, can we just have a conversation?" Well, Karen, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Thank you for telling us a little bit about what you're doing over on Patreon and sharing insights to your course. I really hope that both married couples and even engaged couples will go and check that stuff out. We'll make sure that there's a link in the show notes. But tell everybody where they can find you on the
Oh,
day to
thank
day.
you. So I am at moneyandmarriage.net. That's my website. You can also find me on Instagram. That's moneyandmarriage2. That's the number 2. And I'm also on Facebook, Karen Money and Marriage. And I would love your listeners just to reach out to me and say hello. And that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And of course, they can come and find you on the New Money Habits Patreon page,
Of
and they
course.
can see you there as well.
Yes.
And they can join our ever-growing Facebook group, the 2025 No Spend Challenge. Come check us out over there as well. But again, Karen, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for the dedication to the big time difference. If you guys couldn't tell by Karen's accent, she is not local to the United States, originally from the UK, but now residing in Kenya, Africa.
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Well, can't wait to have you on again very, very soon.
Thanks, Nino.
That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits podcast. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review to help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money.